I wasn't the best student and kind of struggled in high school. Went to college, just about got my degree, and went out into the world. And, to one degree or another, I've been relatively successful. For many of you listening to the show, you might have a similar experience. My guest today is Charlie Fitzgibbon. And Charlie actually left school when he was 15. And school wasn't for him, but he went to work on a job site as a carpenter and garnered over a decade of experience working internationally as a project manager and started his own company when he was around 25. And Charlie is the founder and managing director of Edinburgh Construction out of the United Kingdom. And today we're going to have a great discussion about his journey to being a business owner, what he's learned as a business owner, as a leader. And the conversation is very insightful because it's interesting where we all start in our journey and where we are on that path. But who we were when we were kids isn't necessarily who we're going to be when we're adults. And that's encouraging for any of you who have children and any of you who are reflecting on your life's journey. Towards the end of our conversation, which goes for about an hour, Charlie shares some very, very interesting insights into what motivates him. And so you'll want to check that out towards the end, but you will enjoy this entire conversation because you'll hear yourself, if you're a business owner, in Charlie's story, his particular ambitions, his particular drives, and his successes and his challenges. So enjoy my conversation with Charlie. Feel free to share it with other people. I know you'll get some tremendous insights here. And thank you, as always, for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Welcome to Construction Genius.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And just want to kick it off. You are the owner, the leader of your construction company, and today you had a leadership team meeting. What was the topic of conversation?
Yeah, it was our Christmas event, and we had all the guys into the office, guys and girls, I should say, and we talked about leadership. We do it twice a year. We have a gathering like this, and there's usually a theme. So we talked about leadership, what that means, how everybody can demonstrate leadership no matter what their job role is. It's not just one for the site managers or for the guys in the office. It's how everybody conducts themselves. And we believe in a sort of a collaborative approach. We don't have site managers barking orders. We believe in sort of working side by side. So how leadership is horizontal and not just vertical. And we talked about communication and how we can get the most out of each other by communicating with respect and fairly and active listening and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it was an insightful day. I think that we all got a lot from it.
Was that something that you developed the content for the day yourself? You came up with the ideas, or how did you structure the educational aspect of it, or the discussion aspect? And then what was your goal in bringing everyone together?
So I didn't do it all myself. We bring people in, sort of keynote speakers for these events. So we had a chap named Rupert, who's a business consultant of sorts, does a lot of work on communications, and he works in motorsport. We were in a very highly team-driven environment, so he was able to bring a lot of insights. And we did a few activities as well. We had a few fun activities. The guys had to, in teams, build the tallest tower out of spaghetti and marshmallows.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Which was a lot of fun. And what I was trying to get out of it was, construction's a difficult environment, right? It's high stress, it's high pressure. There's a lot of capital involved. Clients have got high expectations, and we need to manage that. And I think we could all think of situations whereby you can maybe circumnavigate some tricky situations with just good communication and working together as a team. So I was trying to, if I could have one takeaway, it's for the guys to go back to sites on Monday and feel like they can get through their solutions by working together and picking each other up versus getting into conflicts or arguments.
What's the difference between good communication and bad communication then?
I mean, it's different for everybody, and that's the thing. We talked about that a lot today. How different people have got different communication styles. So unfortunately, there's no one size fits all, and a lot of it is about listening and understanding what the other person is trying to say, what's their communication style, and for you as an individual to adapt your communication to suit that. So what you're saying doesn't fall on deaf ears. We talked about how some people, myself involved, falls into this category, like very direct, short format, bullet point conversations, whereas others would find that rude and prefer lots of small talk, lots of chit chat, this, that, and the other, relationship building, and then you get into the crux of the communications. And other people like details and analysis and spreadsheets and comparisons and all this. So a lot of it is about learning how the other person works and listening.
What have you what have you learned as you've grown in your leadership about how to listen to people?
It's easier said than done. It's. I mean, there's a few techniques that I've learned. Just one thing that I try to do is in a meeting is be the last person to talk. Try to let everybody else get their piece out first. Not only does it make people feel valued, listened to, and heard, also I think aids the conversation because if there's any decisions to be made, you want to have all the information first. So that's one thing that I've had to go through is just forcing yourself to have these habits. That's one of them. Another one, just taking a pause, is another thing. Like don't carry your frustrations, particularly in construction where lots of stuff goes wrong all the time. Don't carry that bad energy from one situation to the next. Just take a moment, take a breath, take a pause. They say in construction, right, that the best tradespeople are smokers. Not that I condone smoking, but the guys that go on smoko and have a break, and it allows them to diffuse and think things through. So try to not. I don't smoke, so I can't rely on that, but I'll have the equivalent to before jumping out with whatever.
Yeah, a little nicotine to calm you down, huh?
Or just time, just a moment, just a bubble, out of the thick of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. It's interesting because as you were saying about the last person to talk, I think often in a leadership, for people in leadership, they feel like they have to be the first person to talk because that's their job as a leader. When you're in a room with some of your guys and gals and they're looking to you to talk and you're trying to be the last person to talk, how do you handle that situation?
Well, you got to read the room a bit as well. I mean, sometimes you do need to dig your heels in. We've got plenty of people that if you let them, they'll talk all day. So you need to sort of use a bit of measure and control with that as well. But I think it's just gauging that people who want to express something have expressed it first, and I'm trying to understand that. And maybe being the last person to talk doesn't mean to sit there in silence, but you can ask probing questions. So if somebody says something before coming back with your conclusions, you could ask questions about it to try and understand it better, make sure you really understand the situation. So it's not about shutting up and saying nothing. You need to be
Right.
present. You need to obviously demonstrate that you're in control, but I think it's in concept. It's more about just making sure that everybody feels heard and listened to, and you've absorbed the correct information because things can get misunderstood, particularly when you're in a high-paced environment.
Okay. Give us a little bit about your background because you started off as a carpenter in the field and now you own your own construction company. Just tell us a little bit about your journey here.
Yeah, journey is the word. It certainly has been one, but I'll give you the short story. So, left school at 15, which is before you do any sort of serious exams, and our career advice teacher was supposed to give me a application form for the local supermarket, but the printer wasn't working that day, so I didn't even get that, and I was thrust out into the big bad world and landed in construction, as many people do, and got started off as a labourer. Really enjoyed it. I've always thought I had quite clever hands and enjoyed applying that. And I liked the environment whereby you had to think things through and be a problem solver, and you were literally building something tangible that people enjoy. So I just fell in love with it and taking it from there. So I went through my apprenticeship as a joiner, as we would say in Scotland, or as a carpenter or a chippy. And my boss at the time was a big believer in giving responsibility and autonomy. And at a very young age, I was left. I don't know why. In hindsight, he trusted me to do it, but I was left to site manage jobs. And we were doing one particular job, and the client had a project management firm looking after their interests, big multinational company who, at the end of the job, said, "Hey, do you want to come work for us?" So did that, got a job with them, did a management program through them, client side project management, worked all over, worked in America, worked in South Asia, worked in the Middle East, worked in Australia, worked in New Zealand. Like they quite liked young people who didn't have families, didn't have responsibilities,
Yeah.
quite hungry, and you'd be chucked into an environment. We were doing, £100 million plus projects, and hotels and resorts and townships and that type of thing. So it was honestly the best opportunity I could have asked for because you learned so much in a very short space of time. So I did that for a few years, and
And how old were you when you went to work and started traveling around? How old were you then?
I was young, so early 20s. So I think I first got that job, I would have been 22, 23. And I stuck at it for a number of years. And then when I started Edinburgh Construction, how old was I? 20, no, I would have been younger. God, it goes so fast. Must have been 21, 20 and 20 to 21 when I started working in that role. And I started Edinburgh Construction when I was 25.
Right. So it's interesting. So you left school at 15. I know for many of the American ears that may be a little weird. I know that in the United Kingdom people leave school, typically 16. 15's a year early. Why did you leave school? Was it just not for you?
Wasn't for me. And 50, so it was. I was just about to turn 16, so it was just sort
Yeah.
of where my birthday landed. It's
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
the earliest opportunity you have to leave school.
Right.
Uh, I was out there, and I think it was 2 or 3 months before my 16th birthday, and it was coming. Like for me, I didn't take school seriously.
Right.
It was a place to have fun and muck about with your mates, and an inconvenience more than anything else.
Yeah.
So I always had it in my mind, and plus I like, you know, I wasn't the best at sort of taking instructions from people, and sort of
Right.
teachers didn't really see that approach as a helpful one. So I think it was a win-win situation for all those involved that I decided to leave. And
What did your parents think about you leaving school at that time?
uh, they weren't too excited about it to begin with, but my dad did exactly the same thing at his age. My dad was an engineer of the Merchant Navy, and he started work at 16,
Right.
so he couldn't really stop me. And I was never really good at taking instructions, so I was going to do it anyways. But
Right.
no, they were happy. I mean, I think they went through their periods of thinking, "Oh dear, what's he going to wind up doing?" But as the years went by, they understood that the decision was for the better, and I'd like to think they still think so.
Now it's interesting because you mentioned a couple of times that you weren't very good at taking instructions. So you go onto a job site when you're 15, and it sounded like you kind of got the hang of it pretty quickly and got put in charge of stuff. How did that not taking instruction very well in school, how did that carry out over to the job site and as your career began to build? Was it because you were interested in what you were doing that you were more open to that feedback, or what happened there?
I think so. I think that's exactly it. I mean, I respected the people that were giving me orders, I guess, in that situation, and they were
Mm,
doing things I wanted to learn how to do. And for anybody with a trade, they know you don't learn it overnight. It takes years of practice and learning and paying attention. So I quickly shifted gear because I went from a school environment where I didn't really find anything interesting, so I didn't really care about paying attention to an environment when I thought, "Hey, this is cool. This is I could see myself doing this." So I shift gear, and I basically just became a sponge. I think I just shut up, I listened, I paid attention, I watched, not just about how to be on the tools, but how the sites interacted, how the different people communicated with another, how jobs operate, how the materials arrived, and how they were dealt with, and the mythology around managing a site effectively. So yeah, I just exactly like you said, because I found it interesting. I think I just learned to shut up, and I figured that, hey, I'm going to get the best out of this if I pay attention, because these guys know a hell of a lot that I could benefit from.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it as we reflect on our own careers and then perhaps people that we're working with, even our own kids, if we have kids, is just that idea of if someone is not showing interest in something or has behavioral issues, it may be because they're just not interested in what they're doing.
Yeah,
And if you find out what they're interested in and put them in that position, then their whole attitude, demeanor, action, it all changes right there.
absolutely. I think some of my school teachers like wouldn't have believed
Yeah.
how things went if they'd met me after that, And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And school's not for everybody, right? It's
Right, right.
for certain people, but not for everybody.
It's interesting because I think about, you reflect on that, you reflect on on who you were in school, at your age. I mean, I know what I was like when I was your age. We don't need to get into the details, but to think that I'd be where I am now is something that is kind of amazing if you were to ask my teachers. But again, I think that happens with a lot of people, as people mature.
That's it. Yeah, you grow up, don't you? You get serious about life, or you don't. One or the other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. So as you started off in your career, at what point did you begin to think about, I'd like to start my own business?
There was a few things. I mean, working in client-side project management was a real eye-opener, because I was put in a position where I was liaising with our clients directly, and a lot of our clients were developers, very successful, lots of money, doing all their own things. Like we'd be running sites whereby the client would turn up in their helicopter or their Bentley,
Yeah,
spend
yeah,
2 hours with you over the course of a 3 year project, smile, shake your hand, take some pictures, and then leave. And I just thought, wow, there's this whole world out there. And I guess going back to some of the traits that I talked about, I liked autonomy, I like to do my own thing, I like to make my own decisions. And I guess I wasn't the best employee, because I still had that bit inside of me that thought,
of course.
I know
Yeah,
best,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
arrogance, but it was there nonetheless. And I just always thought, there's a few things that I thought I could not do better, but values that I held that I wanted to bring into, I wanted to materialize that in the vision I saw. So it was always coming. And I guess I just found the right time. Working in the job that I was at, I was getting a lot of experience in a condensed space of time. So I thought I was really on a good platform to do something, and I just went for it. And I thought to myself, if you're going to do something like this, do it when you're young, because if it all goes wrong, you can recover, and you've still got plenty of time. And before you've got a family and commitments and all the rest of it. In my head, it just made absolute sense. If I was going to have a crack at this, just get on with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you think about your timeline, so you start working 15, 16, and you start your own business when you're 25. So that's roughly a decade of experience, right?
Yeah.
And so you see the wisdom to a certain extent there of not going to university, because let's say you did go to college or whatever, and you're done by the time you're 22. You might have a project management degree, and so there's another decade or so before you might have the chops necessary to start your own gig.
Yeah.
And then at that point you might have the wife and the kids and all that kind of stuff, which
Yeah.
might hinder you. And I think that's interesting that you talk about it in that way of, while you're young and when you don't have responsibilities, um, other than yourself, going out there and starting a business.
Yeah, absolutely made perfect sense to me, and also just that experience of really starting at the bottom and working your way up. You see so much. That,
Hmm.
if the university experience or the college experience is fantastic for many people, and I've now enrolled in university part time later on in life to sort of fill that
Yeah.
education gap. But I found so much benefit from being on the tools, shoulder to shoulder with the lads, doing a job start to finish, and those experiences, I believe, is what's shaped the way that I run the business today.
So when you started, did you start with your own money or did you get backing from other folks? How did you get going?
It was very bootstrapped to begin with. Through the job that I had, because I was traveling a lot and I wasn't really spending any money on anything. I was just getting
Yeah.
paid. I did
Yeah.
manage to sort of build up a decent amount of savings there. I think I underestimated how much starting a business actually costs. But I went for it, and so I had a bit of money to start with that I chucked in, and we had some early success. So one thing that I was doing at the very beginning, as well as construction, is we were buying flats and flipping them side by
Yeah,
side.
yeah,
So we were
yeah.
able to build up some retained profits quite quickly. And I don't really spend a lot of money. I don't have a materialistic lifestyle, so I keep the profits within the business, and I use that to grow. And then that got us so far. And then in 2019, uh, started working with a chap that I was introduced to, bit of a property background. We did a project or two for him. He was a developer of sorts, and the relationship grew arms and legs. And at one point, he just said, "Hey, I really like what you're doing. Can I join you?" So he came in. He bought into the business essentially. He brought it with him some equity capital, so that gave us sort of a new uh, leg up, and we're able to really sort of get motoring then. So, and then that enabled us to again grow profits more and more and more, and we got access to different funding opportunities through that because we were able to scale it very quickly. And now we're going through that process again. So we're looking about bringing another equity partner into the business now. We've had a few offers over the years, but I've sort of pushed it back for the right time. And this year we're just pulling the trigger on that, which again is going to enable us to take that leap forwards and really scale up.
Okay, so it's interesting because this is one of the dilemmas that people have in terms of growth and control is, like you said, it's expensive to grow.
Yeah.
And so that may require bringing in outside sources of funding. There's many different sources, and you chose the equity partnership um, route. Um, the way you're describing yourself, you're very independent. I can appreciate that because I think I share that as well. And so, what kind of process did you go through when you were deciding to take on that partnership in terms of knowing that you would be ceding at least some control, or just simply because you're taking other people's money? How
Yeah.
did that work for you?
Oh, it was weeks and weeks and weeks of deliberation in my mind, for all the reasons you've just said. But I'm quite an ambitious chap. I'm think I'm quite sensible as well. I like to keep my feet on the ground, and I'm a big believer in planning and looking ahead and trying to identify where you want to go and reverse engineering that. I just figured I'm not going to get there by myself. And it's that old adage, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. So I recognized it was a necessary part of the process. And
Mm-hmm.
once I made that decision, it was just about finding the right person
Mm.
because it's like anything. Like if you're going to sort of have a significant person in your life, then you need to like them and and be comfortable with that. So it then just about became about finding the right person, and the chap that came in, we got on well, we worked well together, we complemented each other. He had a lot of experience as well, completely opposite end of the spectrum to me. So in his
Mm-hmm.
60s, been running construction and property development businesses for 40 odd years,
Mm-hmm.
so he brought with him not just capital but also experience, and he was a good sounding board for me. So he acts as he doesn't tell me what to do, but he acts as the devil's advocate.
Mm.
He checks me, but if it was somebody that was breathing down my neck or you know making every decision for me, it just wouldn't work. I needed to make sure I was comfortable with the person in such a way that I could still make decisions, I could still run the business the way that I want to run the business and the way that I envision the business should be ran. And I've managed to find that. So it wasn't a quick decision and finding the first person to put their hands in their pockets. It was a very deliberate, considered plan.
It's interesting because you mentioned that this gentleman is older than you, has different experience set than you. I think that's one of the challenges that some partnerships have, is that the partners duplicate each other too much,
Yeah, yeah,
and that leads to conflicts and perhaps even a lack of appreciation of one another because um, one partner might say, well, why do I need you? After a period of time, I mean, I'm just as good at you as good as you at the things that you're doing. So why do I need you? And that can help. I mean, that can foster some resentment there.
Yeah, no, it's funny you should say that because I actually had the exact same experience. So I did make a mistake before where I did go into business with somebody else that was very similar to me.
Mm,
And we didn't really commit seriously to one another. So when I realized it wasn't working, it was very easy to sort of exit that situation. But I tried a business relationship with somebody else, same attitude as me, same perspective as me, and it was a disaster. Yeah, it was an absolute
yeah.
disaster. And it was just like you said. I mean, full transparency, I just got to the point where I thought I was doing all the work uh, for half of the interest in the upside. So I just thought this is no good, and we didn't. It's also quite dangerous because if you've got two people that are similar, you can very easily propel down a certain direction without someone to say, "Hold on a sec, have we thought about this? You know, is this the best approach?" I'm a big believer in sort of surrounding yourself with people who've got different ideas and different perspectives and different approaches to you, because it sort of forces you to think in a holistic way that, left to your own devices, you might just miss entirely.
Okay, so that's interesting to explore. So you made a decision to go into partnership after a period of time. You figured out that this was not the right fit. How long did a couple of things? How long did it take you to figure out that it wasn't the right fit, and then how long did it take you to do something about it?
So I was quite careful in the beginning, so I never sort of signed on the dotted line. Yeah, so
Hmm.
what we did is we decided to do a few projects together
Uh huh.
without the commitment of sort of having the business 50-50 and all the rest of it. So we were dipping our toes in the water, and we did it for 2 years, more because construction projects, as you know, take time. You know,
Yeah.
it's not
Right.
like, other industries where you sort of, it's a very direct chain of events to produce a product. So once you start something and you're committed to finishing it, you've got to see that out. So it was really, we did a few projects together, and partway through the first few, I realised that it wasn't going to go anywhere, but we had to see through what we'd started. So I just thought, well, I'll see these projects through to the end and then just leave it at that. So
Right.
it was all amicable. We're still friends, we still chat to each other and all the rest of it. There was no big blow ups or anything like that. It was all above board, and we just said, well, we tried and it's not worked out.
That's good. It's interesting because sometimes what happens is people dive in with both feet. They sign on the dotted line, they get married, so to speak, and then when the divorce happens, it's really a pain in the neck. And so having that sort of trial period is a wise way of going about that.
Yeah, no, I was very careful in that respect. I think about things deeply. And I was very careful not to throw myself into a situation that I might regret.
Yeah, yeah. Do you ever find yourself overthinking things?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I think that's I don't know. I think that's a common thread with business owners, isn't it? Is the sort of laying awake at night, contemplating the day and the decisions that you've made. I mean, I, there's different variants of overthinking. Like I think I'm quite a good decision maker, so I can make
Uh-huh.
decisions and run with it. In fact, that's the only way I like to do things, because once you've made a decision, it's just a case of execution. You don't have to debate and deliberate things anymore. But I do think very deeply, more in retrospect than before the event. So I've got the habit of, I'll make a decision, and then all my thinking will be afterwards and assessing, how did that go? Was it the right decision? What would I do differently, etc. But yeah, I'm a bad one for lying in bed at night thinking about the week that's just gone past. Going, oh, could I have done this any different? What if I did that? What if I made this decision? I don't know.
Do you
So
have
if
a
that's
do you have a specific decision making process that you go through?
uh, no, not particularly. But if I'm really struggling with something, I mean, there's a few things. So one thing that I've really learnt is trust your gut instinct. I know it's a cliche, but
Hmm.
I've very rarely regretted a decision made that my instinct led me to make. And I have regretted situations whereby I felt an intuition and I've gone against it for whatever reason,
Mm,
and it's came back to bite me. So
mm.
I've learned to trust your instincts there for a reason. If I'm struggling to make a decision, there's that sort of classic one that, um, not to be flippant about it, but flip a coin and see if you're disappointed with the answer. Someone
Yeah.
taught me that quite early on. So if you flip a coin and see where it lands on. If your reaction is disappointment, you know what to do.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, I try not to let decisions sit for too long. Sometimes I'll sleep on something if it's got a big impact and there's no time constraints. But uh, the worst thing to do is not make a decision, I think,
Yeah.
because then you just spin things out and a situation can get worse. So you need to make your mind up and commit to it. That's better than not doing anything at all.
It's interesting when you talk about intuition. So, if you can you think of a specific decision you made where you went against your intuition, and why did you do that? Can you remember the why?
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave the specifics out for
Yeah,
reasons that be
yeah,
clear.
that's
But
fine. Yeah,
taking on certain clients, for
yeah,
example, I'm sure that's one that many people could relate to.
yes,
So sometimes we get asked to tender for a project. We'll go look
mm-hmm.
at it, and we know what space we do well in. We know
Yes,
the areas that we do well, and we know the areas that aren't for us. And we know what makes a good client, if that makes sense. I know that that's a bit of a blunt way of putting it,
no,
but
no, 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 it's not. It's fine. It's perfect.
yeah, the, the nightmare clients, the ones that can't make decisions, or the ones that are going to exploit you or squeeze
Mm-hmm.
you and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been instances where we've taken on jobs because the project looks great, uh, the 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 size of the project fits our growth model. It might be a
Mm-hmm.
nice big job or something where you can see a lot of margin in, or something that plays the skill sets of your team, so you'll do well. But the client isn't the right fit. The
Mm-hmm.
personality doesn't match.
Yep.
You can see some red flags that you think is going to be troublesome. But you do it because the project looks great,
Yep.
and there's not a single time that we've done that we haven't regretted it.
Yes.
Um, so, and the other instance I can think of is recruitment. So hiring
Mm-hmm.
somebody, their CV looks fantastic. They've got all the
Mm-hmm.
right experience, all the right qualifications. They say all the right things in the interview, but your instinct thinks that maybe the personality might not be a good fit, or there's something about them you can't quite put your finger on it, but it might not work. And then, sure enough, 3 months later, you're thinking, why the hell did we hire this person? So they're two examples that jump to mind.
Yeah, it's very interesting because both of those are people examples, right? So on the one
Yeah,
hand, you have the right type of project, but it's the wrong client, and on the other hand, and the other one, you have the right technical skills, but the wrong maybe cultural fit or wrong personality or something's dodgy about the person.
yeah. Well, people's the tricky thing. I mean, if it wasn't for people, business would be easy, wouldn't it? It's
Yeah, 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 yeah.
just
That's
about building
interesting.
buildings would be fine. It's the people that make it interesting.
Yeah, so it's interesting for you to think through, or because whenever I'm talking with my clients in terms of the projects they're taking on, we're always talking about right client, right project, right location, and you've got to have at least two of those three if you're going to make any money. And if you only have one of them, then you better get ready to lose some money and have a lot of pain, right?
Sure, yeah, it's a good one.
And it's interesting just to think about: are you clear on when you're going to walk away and what's going to cause you to walk away?
Mm. Great question. I mean, we've done it. We have walked away from projects. The times we've walked away, quite simply, is when a client starts to either not pay us or make excuses for not paying us.
Yeah,
That's a situation where, if that happens, it's never going to end well. And as we all know, in the sector, construction projects are incredibly cash intense,
yep,
and it's all about cash flow. If you run out of cash, then you're nothing.
that's right.
So we've walked away from two jobs because the client's not respected our payment terms. Um, there's been a few which has been difficult, but we've persevered just for the sake of seeing the job through, because you don't want to leave something part done. You want to see something through and feel proud that you've at least delivered the project. And we know that whatever we do, we always leave a good job, a tidy job, good quality of work, and all the rest of it. And nobody wants to sort of leave something unfinished. So if we can, we'll persevere. You know,
Right.
you've made your bed, so sleep in it, sort of thing. But the one thing that would make us walk away is is someone not respecting our payment terms, because that's dangerous territory.
Hey, this is Eric. I know I'm enjoying this conversation with Charlie, and this is the point in the show where I'm going to tell you to go out and buy my book. And you know why? Because my book is awesome. If you read it, you're going to learn effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing frameworks and tools that will help you get better as a leader. The book is, like the podcast, called Construction Genius. And here's a special offer. If you buy 10 or more copies of the book, which if you purchase paperbacks will cost you less than $200, shoot me an email and we will arrange for a Zoom meeting for 1 hour with you and your leadership team where we'll have a Q&A session, and I'll provide you a bonus training for your leadership team. I would normally charge $2,500 for a session like that, and I will do it just for you purchasing 10 copies of the book. There's going to be links in the show notes to the book. So go out to Amazon, get those books right now for you and your leaders, and contact me via my website, or you can just email me, eric@constructiongenius.com. We'll figure out a time to do the Zoom meeting, and you will get killer value from that. All right, let's get back to the conversation with Charlie. Let me ask you, go back to the employees part. One of the biggest challenges I find with a lot of folks that I work with, and these are all really successful businesses, is that they have someone in their organization who's not a good fit. And usually it's not necessarily the technical part of it. It's the personality or the values, but they're slow to let someone go.
Yeah.
And so I have to say to them sometimes, hey, listen, if this person is still here 6 months from now, do I have your permission to yell at you? And it's a joke, but at the same time, I'm trying to make a point. Why do you think people struggle? Someone like yourself in an ownership role or a leadership role, why do they struggle with letting people go?
Yeah, I've been there. I've done the exact same thing. It's tough because, well, for starters, recruitment is time consuming, and no, I don't think anybody really enjoys it. So the thought of having to replace somebody comes with the baggage of, okay, now I'm going to have to put adverts out, I'm going to have to interview people, I'm going to have to train somebody, I'm going to have to go through 3 to 6 months of them getting up to speed and all the rest of it. So nobody wants to go through that if they can help it. And I think it's easy to fall into the trap. I know that I fall into this trap is if you've got somebody in your team and there's a few elements that aren't working, I've been naive enough to think that they'll grow out of it, or you'll train them out of it, or they'll get up to speed eventually. It's just a matter of time. Correct training, correct conversation, correct discussions, they'll be all right. But if it's a personality thing, you're never going to change that. That's there. So I agree with you wholeheartedly that if it's not right, the best thing to do is just cut it there and then.
Right.
But it's tough. Yeah, it's really tough, and it also has an impact on the rest of the team. It's if you've got someone in an important role, and in construction, it's the roles dovetail into each other, right? You've got operations, you've got commercial, you've got finance, you've got sales and marketing. Everybody needs the other to succeed in what they do in their role. And if you're going to put a risk factor in there by removing somebody from the team, you worry about the negative impact that's going to have on the rest of the team dynamic, because suddenly their workload is going to increase, their stress levels are going to increase because there's an empty desk all of a sudden, and not physically, because even if you brought someone in, it's going to be 3 to 6 months before they're really up to speed and useful. So it has such a wide spread of impacts that moving somebody can cause a lot of issues, but it's important to remember that those issues caused by removing somebody is short term, but the issue of keeping somebody that's not the right fit is a long term issue. So
Yes.
that's the way I convince myself. It's just a little bit of short term pain, but it's for the better good.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, one way you could look at it is that pain is unavoidable. It's just a matter of doing what you can to pick when you're going to get the pain and how intense the pain's going to be.
Yeah, rip the Band-Aid off, right? Just get on with it.
So just one last point on this with the people thing. One of the questions I ask my clients when they're having a challenge with a person is I ask them this question. I ask them, so if they walked in today and they said to you, I have another job down the street. What would you say?
You
And
mean
the
you
purpose
mess?
of that, so what I mean by that is, so they walking in, they're saying, I'm resigning, I'm going to another company. Would you say,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, would you say, great, I wish you the best? Or would you say, hold on a second, let's have a conversation and keep you?
it's an open door for us. I find that if someone's came to that conclusion, even if you can convince them to stay, you're
Yeah,
probably kicking the can down the road, because if they've got that idea in their head, even if they stay, there's always going to be in their mind that what if,
right,
grass is greener, what if I did this, what if I did that. So my view is we've got an open door. If it's not right for you, I mean, as long as everything's been done amicably, you'll have our support. If we get a phone call about a reference, you'll have an honest, decent reference. We don't
right.
hold anybody back. We don't cause a scene. We've had it where people have left and came back, and
Yeah, yeah,
I'd rather keep the relationship good. If presumably this is somebody that we respect and all the rest of it, and does a good job, I'd rather keep the relationship than sour it over whatever. And I've made, I have convinced people to stay before, and they leave anyways. It might
yeah,
not be that day, it might be in 6 months' time, or it might be in a year's time, or 2 years' time. It's going to
yeah.
happen. Once that idea's in their head, I think there's nothing you can really do about it. So I think it's better just to let them do what they need to do. They might come back, they might not, but you're on solid ground and you know where you stand.
Yeah, it's interesting. The way that I use that framework though is, let's say you have this guy that you should let him go, right? And so the person I'm talking to, they usually say, yeah, if he came in and said I'm going, I'd let him go. And I say,
Oh yeah,
okay, well, you understand then what you're saying about this person. So how long are you going to allow them to be in the company with you?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's interesting.
it's a great decision maker.
So you started your business as a relatively young man. How old were you when you started?
25. Yeah,
25.
25.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. So what's been your biggest challenge from the point when you started the company to now?
I mean, there's no end of challenges. I mean,
Yeah.
where do you begin and how long do you have? I mean, we just talked about recruitment. That's a big one. Um, Understanding your place in the sector is a big one. I mean,
Mm,
when we started, we wanted to do everything and being the biggest, baddest, boldest of absolutely everything, and then you just become mediocre at everything. So understanding what you do
interesting.
well, what your skill sets are, and
So let me
specializing
ask you
in
that.
that.
Let me stop you right there, because I do think this is one of the areas where people struggle. Right? Is that
Yeah,
I've got crews. I've got to keep people busy. I need to find work. How did you
yeah.
figure out, and how are you figuring out the best projects for you, the ones that you can really nail and make money on?
I mean, we had an idea. For us, it was larger projects of good quality. It was sort of those two things made sense. Larger projects. I mean, I'm a believer that it doesn't matter if it's 100 grand, a million, or 10 million, or 100 million size of project. Virtually the same amount of stress and headache and management goes into each of them.
Interesting,
So
huh?
I've always thought, don't muck about, try to do odds and ends jobs, just get on with it. I'd rather do fewer larger jobs than multiple smaller jobs.
Interesting.
So we understood that, and then the rest, to be honest, has been a little bit of trial and error. So
Yep.
doing stuff, learning from it, saying, okay, this isn't quite for us. We're doing some B2C stuff at the beginning, so doing primary residence, direct to client. Um, we've realised that we prefer B2B, so we'll work for developers, we'll work for architects, we'll work for surveyors, we'll work for sort of corporate clients, just because it matches our skill sets. We like commercial approaches, rather than the sort of more romantic, sweetening up relationship stuff.
Yep.
Well, it's not our personality. I mean, we can
No,
do that, and that's not to
sure.
say that we're gruff, blunt builders, but we prefer to work in the space where there's clear objectives, usually
Yep.
commercially driven, because we know where we stand and we can move fast on that, and we do better in that environment. So that was something that we learned just through doing stuff. We did some projects B2C, we did some projects B2B, and we do better at this. We come out better off. And then once you understand that, then you can really sort of tighten the screws and then examine, okay, where are we making the most margin? We tend to do a bit better here than we do there, so let's double down on that space. Again, going back to clients, what are the clients that we like to work with? Is it sort of smaller companies or larger corporates? Where do we sit? So understanding that, understanding our clients' values and do they match with ours and that sort of thing. So we had a rough idea to begin with. We're mostly residential driven as well. Most of our projects are residential, but we do commercial projects. We won't turn commercial stuff down. We won't turn industrial stuff down, but we just tend to do more residential, probably just
Yep.
because of the demand. Um, and yeah, just it feels right, so you keep doing more of that, and the bank balance looks good, so you keeps the commercial team happy and everybody paid, and that's important because we talked about the quickest way to screw up is to run out of cash. So you need to make
That's
sure
right.
that you're on top of that and you're doing projects that serve that purpose. And then once we learned that, we just decided to double down, triple down, and I mean we things. Having said that, things have changed a little bit recently because I'm sure it's the same where you are, but here in the UK, the environment's changed a lot over the past 3 years. Maybe more in the UK, just where the economy's sat. We had some interesting decisions made by our government post COVID,
Yep.
and that's I won't get into the politics of it, but it's put our economy through a bit of a roller coaster, and interest rates have shot up, inflation shot up, so we're we're looking to diversify some of our revenue models a bit more. So one thing
Right.
we're doing now is we're getting into public works, so getting onto
Mm.
the frameworks. We can tender for public contracts, which in the past we looked at and thought either it's not worth the hassle or there's not enough margin in it. But the bigger the business gets, the more I appreciate stability and diversification. Not to have all your eggs in one basket and not to have all your baskets as the big, exciting, sexy stuff. You've got to have a few bread and butter things going on just to make sure that if if anything happens out with your control, you're as stable as you can be, so you can weather the storm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was chatting with one of my clients who does a lot of commercial work, but because of the economy here in the sector that he's in, they're looking at public works as well at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you had to start your business all over again, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
I mean, the honest and annoying answer is probably not much because I think it's through the mistakes that you learn, right?
Yeah.
So I think the the mistakes, if you want to call it that, is maybe just the necessary part of the journey, and we'll keep on making them. We're not afraid of that. But if putting that to one side and with the knowledge that we have today, similar things we talked about, I'd really focus on who I'm recruiting. I have made some mistakes.
Yeah.
I've recruited people because I like them and they can't do the job, and I've recruited
Hmm.
people that can do the job, but I don't like them or they don't gel with the team, and neither is a good combination.
Yeah.
So really focusing on recruitment, focusing on the vision and getting clear on that. I think the quicker you understand who you are and what your place is, the better, and then you can really smart up your marketing and your branding, so you're putting your best foot forwards into the sector.
Hmm.
And I'm a big believer in getting yourself in front of as many faces and people as possible because you never know where it might lead, and all the rest of it. So the quicker you understand who you are and where you sit in the market, the more capable you are of doing that.
Well, why are you not afraid to make mistakes?
Because that's where you learn, and I think they're always going to happen as long as they're controlled. You don't want any catastrophes that'll sink you, or you don't want anybody to get seriously hurt or anything like that. So
Right.
we don't invite them, but I mean, every job we do, we have lessons learned. That's guaranteed. And one of the wonderful things about construction is it is a rabbit hole, and you never master it, and there's nobody that has ever mastered it because it's constantly evolving. So I think that's just a given in life. You're going to make mistakes, and if you accept that, then you can adopt the mentality whereby, well, let's benefit from these things and learn from them. So we've made mistakes, and we'll make plenty more, but I don't see that necessarily as a bad thing. I think that's the point where we learn and where we grow and when we can sort of dial the screws in our business and become better company for it.
What advice would you give to someone who's been in the business, like you were for about a decade, and they're thinking of starting their own company? Um, what what are like what's one thing they should do and one thing they shouldn't do?
I think you need to manage your growth and your financial capabilities. So if you want to grow fast, then your focus needs to be on cash flow.
Yeah,
Uh, that's what we learned very quickly. Is we had a very ambitious growth plan, and day one I had to be thinking, well, how are we going to fund this? Construction we're paid in arrears, at minimum a month. Some contracts we have under 90-day terms. So how are you going to fund that? Which is difficult for young construction businesses because the high street banks aren't interested. They see it as a high risk sector. So
right.
you need to get confident in how you're going to cash flow and then design your growth around that. It's easy to be naive, and to focus. I think is the other thing. Like try, it's okay to pivot, it's okay to adapt, but don't get distracted by all the shiny
Hmm.
objects and the white noise. Focus. Be prepared for some hard work. I mean, as anybody knows, it's long days. Unfortunately, you're up early, you finish late. You got to be prepared for that and think about how that's going to impact your life. And are you prepared for that? Is your home situation ready for the impact? Because it's going to take you on a wild journey, and you need to make sure you're resilient enough and you've got your home in order and everything like that. Um, or not, just as long as your lifestyle matches. And then just back yourself. Trust you as the decision maker. Um, if you're second guessing yourself, or you're saying, "Oh, I'm not sure about this, not sure about that," you're going to get off to so many false starts. So if you're going to do it, get behind yourself and back yourself because nobody else will do it for you.
Hmm.
So you need to have that confidence in your own abilities uh, first and foremost.
As your business grows, and you started off with your bags on as a carpenter, one of the challenges I think that leaders have is that sometimes they don't feel like they're working because they're thinking, they're in meetings, they're making decisions and giving directions, but they don't feel like they're working.
Hmm.
And what happens then is they get stuck doing work that other people should be doing in order to sort of make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
How do you handle that, going from being hands on to being more hands off and not micromanaging?
I mean, you just need to get real. It's somebody's got to do it. It's got to be you, and it's work. I mean, I've never touched the tools. I've not touched the tools in years, but that's not what I'm here for. We've
Right.
got guys for that, and I distinctly remember, like at the very beginning, where you sort of be in that limbo moment where you're a bit on the tools and you're a bit on the phone, and I quickly realised that in those circumstances, I was just doing a rubbish job at all of the above. So you're not productive on site because you're constantly stopping because your phone's ringing or you need to send an email, you need to measure something up. So you're not really doing a good day's work on the tools, and equally, your business is suffering because you're not giving it your full attention. So for me, it was a very unemotional process. If you remove the emotion, you realize if I'm going to do this, this is what I've got to do. And I then realized that actually working on the business, taking the meetings, doing all the administrative work and recruitment and hiring people, that's far more exhausting and far more of a day's graft than being on the tools ever is. Maybe not physically, but the mental strain that puts on you, which feels physical, is far greater. So I sleep quite well at night knowing that I've done a fair day's work because it's not for the faint-hearted, and I feel it. So you just need to sort of get on board, forget it. It's just a mentality thing, and realize that you are your most valuable asset, and where is your time best spent. You can hire people to be on the tools and do that, but your job is to work on the business, to grow it, to bring the work in, to build the relationships with the clients and the stakeholders and the design teams, and empower your team and provide leadership. That's worth. That's what your time is worth, not being a tradesperson that you can hire for how many bucks an hour and get on with it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. You said something I think that's really good. That's not why I'm here.
yeah,
And so, you should, to people who are listening, if you catch yourself doing something, whatever it is, you may not be on the tools, but you may be micromanaging a project manager or something like that, and ask yourself, is that why I'm here? Is that the highest and best use of my time? And if you can say no to that, then you know that you need to stop doing that and stay focused on why you are there. So that's excellent.
yeah.
Well, Charlie, I really appreciate your time. Let me just ask you a big question here. 10 years from now, where do you want your business to be?
I just want to be doing more of what we're doing. I mean, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but I'm quite, unfortunately, quite an ambitious chap. So
Yeah. Why'd you
we
say
want to.
unfortunately?
Well, it's a bit of a curse, isn't it? Because it's you're not settled with anything, and you're constantly pushing yourself, and it's not for the faint-hearted, and it's a journey. So I say that maybe a bit tongue in cheek because I won't have it any other way, but it comes with a
Right.
cost. And if you want to grow a business to scale, it takes a lot of work and a lot of hours. So that's a curse that I live with, but I'm happy to live with because I'd be restless and bored otherwise. But
What
yeah,
is your ambition then? When you say you're ambitious, what are you ambitious for?
it's difficult. So without getting sort of too, wishy-washy, hippy-dippy about it, one of the things that drives me is I'm a big believer in I want to be the best version of me I possibly can.
Sure.
And I find that the business arena is the best place to put yourself
Hmm.
through the paces.
Hmm.
I think there's nowhere else in the world that will present the challenges that running and growing a business will, and the sort of personal weightlifting that you need to do to keep pace is a tremendous one. So that's where I do it, and it's sort of a blanket statement that covers so many spaces. And growing the business to me is it's not about having the highest turnover in the UK or being the biggest this or whatever, but it's about holding our values and seeing how far we can push that. We believe in quality, we believe in modern methods of construction, we believe in a proper well-being for our staff and having a good working environment. How far can I push that? That's what I want to find out. Where can I take that and delivering value to our sector? I feel good being useful. So if we can add value to our sector and add value to our clients, I want to see how far we can take that. For me, that's fun and that's exciting.
That's really interesting because what I'm curious about is how did the kid who, didn't want to go to school and, started working as a carpenter, how did the kid at 15, 10, 15, 20 years later, how did you figure that out? Where did that come from, do you think? What you just described? Because, that's more than just I want to make money and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think to be honest about it, a lot of it was in my early part of my career. I worked underneath and was surrounded by some fantastically inspirational people.
Huh.
I had some really good bosses that showed me what it means to be a good person. Like they showed me leadership, and it
Right.
inspired me. And I thought this is a good person. This is something. This is a good role model to aspire towards. So I put a lot of it down to just being around inspirational people, and a lot of them were doing big, exciting stuff. Particularly on the client side of stuff, you'd be interacting and going for lunches with clients who are big business owners and just on their A game in their fields, not just in
Right.
work but in their life. And it's inspirational. You sort of get a taste for how far you can push life, and you go, "We're here anyways. We're on this planet. You may as well have a crack on it and aspire to be somebody." So that's what I put down. Maybe at school I just wasn't getting that same inspiration. I wasn't being exposed to just the excellence of life, and I was very fortunate in the early part of my career to be exposed to that.
Very interesting. I appreciate you sharing that, Charlie. That was super helpful. I know you're in Scotland there, Edinburgh. I've been to Edinburgh. I love the castle there. So what I'd like you to do is, if you can, is give the listeners a restaurant recommendation in Edinburgh if they're ever visiting, because I know folks from the States come over to Scotland quite often.
Yeah, I mean, you're spoiled in Edinburgh. You really are spoiled. And I've got no affiliation. I don't own any shares in the business or anything like that. But there's a fantastic Italian place in the new town called Bar Napoli. And so
Uh huh.
it's a little, it's known, but it's not sort of, on the top list. So that's, if you like Italian food, that's a go-to. And there's a fantastic tiny little Indian place. It's minuscule. They've only got one table in there, called the Caspar in Marchmont.
Uh-huh.
Owned and run by I believe they're a Pakistani family, and the food is gorgeous. Like when you turn around the street, you can smell it, and it's like the old cartoons where you're sort of drawn into the smell. So, Bar
That's
Napoli and Caspar would be my recommendations.
How do you spell the Caspar?
Oh, good question. I'm going to get this wrong now, so I'm going to have to look it up. Um,
And that's an Ed.
it's,
Yeah, that's. I got the Bar Napoli. I got that. So we're going to put that in the show notes.
yeah. Oh well. I wonder if I'm going to get a free dinner there. So Caspar, Kasbah.
BAH.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Excellent. Oh yeah, I got it right here. There we go. There we go. We're going to put both of those in the show notes. So if you
Nice.
want some good food, if you're ever in Edinburgh, we're going to have those two restaurant recommendations, the Indian and the Italian. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's really great. Awesome. Well, I really do appreciate your time here, Charlie. Thank you for joining me on Construction Genius. I do wish you the best.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Right on. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Charlie here today. We got those restaurant recommendations in Edinburgh, and there's links in the show notes. And I really enjoyed that conversation. I just love entrepreneurs. I love talking to them about their journey and how they got to where they got to. I think one thing that I'm taking away from this conversation is you've got to do the right types of projects for the right clients in the right locations. And you've got to be very diligent to manage your cash flow and to build your people. So do those three things: build the right projects for the right clients, make sure that you're bringing on the right people into the right positions, and then manage your cash flow. You're going to be pretty successful in construction. Easier said than done, I know, but I think you probably have some insights right away into what you can do to be more effective in your leadership role and to grow your construction business in a profitable way. So thank you for listening to Construction Genius today. Feel free to share this episode with other people that you think would benefit from it, and I'll catch you on the next one.